If you found this audio, it's because something went wrong. My name is Kaio. My grandfather disappeared at sea 33 years ago. It was a calm morning, clear skies, tranquil seas. He went out alone on the boat, as he did almost every day. But that time, he didn't come back. They searched for days. Planes, helicopters, divers. They found the boat adrift, with the engine turned off and everything in order. There was just no sign of him, no trace, no explanation. For a long time, the story ended there. An accident. Bad luck. The sea took him. But a few weeks ago, I found a box among my grandmother's old belongings. Letters, nautical maps, a broken compass, and a tape. On it, the voice of my grandfather, recorded the night before his disappearance. And what he said changed everything. Since then, strange things have started happening. People have shown up asking questions. Places that seemed forgotten now have eyes. And the more I discover, the more I'm sure what happened to my grandfather wasn't an accident. Maybe what he found out there was real. And maybe it's better it stayed buried with him. Inside a rusty chest, in the basement of his house, there was a diary, wrapped in plastic, covered in mold, as if someone wanted to hide it, but also preserve it. The first pages were stained by moisture, illegible. Some were blank, but others seemed to have been written in haste. The ink still firm, as if time had respected the fear contained within. The handwriting trembled, crooked letters crossed out, as if he were being watched, as if each word written was a risk. Today, they returned. I heard the call coming from the water. It's not a delusion, I saw the eyes. With each line, the sense that he knew too much grew, that he was trying to record everything. Before it was too late, the last pages had been torn out, and where the final sentence should have been, only a blot of ink remained, as if a trembling hand had hesitated, or had been stopped. Now, I know the sea didn't take my grandfather. He went to the sea, and something out there answered. "The sea has eyes," said the first legible sentence. The ink was nearly faded, but the words still seemed to carry a weight. Something that couldn't be forgotten, something that needed to be said. And it watches those who dare to cross its boundaries. I read that in the middle of the night, with the sound of the waves crashing outside, like a distant echo, but present, as if the sea itself were waiting. Waiting. For something. For me. For someone. That sentence made me freeze. I felt my throat tighten, a growing tension that came from somewhere deep inside me. I already knew that my grandfather didn't disappear by chance. But what had he found? What did the sea want with him? I swear I felt something move in the darkness. A whisper in the wind. Something shifting in the shadows of the house. I looked at the window. The night was calm, the sky starred, but the sound of the waves seemed louder now, closer, as if something, or someone, was watching from outside. I quickly closed the diary, my heart beating faster, but something pushed me to go back, to know more, because deep down I knew there was no turning back. The sea wouldn't let me be. It had already started calling me. In 1987, a fisherman named Elias heard singing coming from the water. It was a calm night, windless, the sky covered in stars. He was alone, as always, at the edge of the coast. But that night, something felt different. When the moonlight reflected on the waves, Elias heard it. At first, it was a distant whisper, a soft melody like a song lost in the depths. Then it became clearer, closer. Soft, almost hypnotic melodies, as if someone were crying at the bottom of the sea. He tried to ignore it, thinking it was just his tired mind playing tricks. But the singing persisted, like a lament. Something told him not to get closer, but curiosity overcame him. He got up from his net, looking at the waters that seemed to stir under the moon, as if they were alive. The next morning, Elias's boat was found adrift, far from the shore, with the engine off and the sails torn. But the strangest thing was the marks. On the hull, there were deep marks, as if hands that weren't Elias's, had tried to enter, scratching the wood with desperate force. There were no signs of a struggle, no signs of an attack, just silence, and the marks that never faded. Elias was never seen again. Some say he got lost in the waters. Others swear that the sea took him to where the song was calling. But no one knows for sure what happened that night. One thing, however, was certain. The sea has its secrets, and those who dare to listen to them may not return to tell. Near the coast of Para, a canoe was sighted that cast no shadow, nor left a trace on the waves. It was a hot morning, and the fisherman was high on his boat, sailing calmly through the still waters. The sun had not fully risen yet, and the horizon blended with a fine mist that seemed to stretch into infinity. But then he saw it. A canoe floating strangely, casting no shadow on the golden waters. There wasn't a single ripple in the water around it, no trace, just silence. Inside the canoe, motionless figures sitting in rigid postures. Their eyes were white, like shells that had been exposed to the sun for too long. Empty eyes, but strangely present, as if they were looking inside the fisherman. They were there like statues, frozen in the middle of the ocean, with no sound. The fisherman tried to look away, but something pulled him in. Then one of the faces moved, slowly, as if it had freed itself from an invisible weight, and smiled. A wide smile, but empty, that seemed more like an invitation than an expression of joy. He froze for a moment, but the smile remained, defiant. And then, as if drawn by an unknown force, the fisherman leaned over the edge of his boat, not realizing what he was doing. In a sudden impulse, he jumped into the water. The fisherman submerged into the dark waters without a scream, without a movement. The canoe remained there, motionless, as if it had never moved. When the waves calmed, everything was silent again. No trace of the man, nothing but the sound of the waves breaking on the shore. They say that those who see the canoe and its occupants never return. They watch, they wait, and the sea, then, takes its part. The only one who returned from that group lost his speech. It was the fisherman Zay, the oldest among them, who came back dragging himself to the village like a specter. The others were never seen again. All those who went on that expedition at sea disappeared without a trace, as if they had been swallowed by the waters on an endless night. There were no signs of struggle, no marks of violence, just emptiness. Zay returned 3 days later, completely silent. He could no longer speak. He didn't scream for help. He didn't tell what he had seen. His eyes were lost, as if something had invaded his soul, something that couldn't be described. Fear was etched on his face, but he couldn't express it in words. In the days that followed, he locked himself in his house, refusing food, and spent hours alone, scribbling something with an old pen. When someone saw him, they found him holding a crumpled piece of paper in his hands, covered in names of fishermen, people who were still alive. For now, he scribbled endlessly, writing and rewriting as if something were compelling him. The names were familiar, men from the village, co-workers, longtime friends. But there was something strange. As time passed, the names became more and more faded, as if the paper itself were being eaten away by time. Those who tried to ask Zay about what happened to the group, or what he had seen at sea, didn't get an answer. He just stared at the paper and shook his head, as if the words weren't enough. Sometimes his eyes would fix on a particular name, and he would begin to tremble, as if that name were a sentence. The nights when Zay slept were interrupted by nightmares, and during the day he isolated himself even more. What the sea brought back with him, no one knows. But one thing is certain, the names keep appearing on the paper. And with each passing day, one more name disappears from the sheet, as if the sea were, in some way, reclaiming what is its own. And as Zay continues to write, the question that hangs over everyone is, who will be the next? The diary describes an area called the Threshold, where time freezes and compasses spin endlessly. At first I thought it was just another legend, a story to scare the younger or less experienced. But the diary was clear. The author, someone who clearly knew what he was doing, recorded the discovery with unsettling precision. He spoke of an isolated area, a lost point between the ocean and the currents that no one dared cross. The Threshold, he called it, and it wasn't a name given by chance. The reports I managed to find, though fragmented, spoke of a region where time seemed to not exist, where, upon crossing it, everything you knew distorted. The wind stopped blowing, the waves ceased to break, and the sky closed in a suffocating gray. The compasses, once accurate, spun endlessly, as if the very planet refused to acknowledge that part of the world. The few who returned from there, changed. One of the most disturbing stories was about a man who arrived at the shore after a journey to the threshold. He had left with a crew, but only he returned. No one knew what had happened to the others, but he didn't speak of it. When they saw him approaching the beach, the man's eyes were completely black, with no trace of white visible. An absolute void, as if the light had been consumed from within his soul. He walked to the land, without haste, with firm steps. And then, he stopped. He looked at the fishermen who were at the docks watching him with curiosity and fear. The man, with eyes as black as coal, said only one sentence. A sentence that cut through the morning silence like a sharp blade. He woke up. And before anyone could ask what he meant by that, the man turned and vanished into the shadows, as if he were part of the wind. Since that day, no one ever saw him again. But among those who remained, something changed. People started hearing sounds at night, whispers coming from the sea. Some said they saw shadows in the waters, shapes that didn't belong to nature, and others swore they heard a low, strange voice saying, "It's near." The threshold. No one dared speak of it out loud anymore, but everyone knew something had been awakened, something that should have stayed asleep. Manuel pulled up a net one night and felt something heavy, pulsing. It was the kind of weight that didn't move like a fish, nor struggle like a trapped animal. It was static, but alive. The rope vibrated as if it were connected to a heart that was still beating down there, beneath the waterline, where the moonlight couldn't reach. He pulled with force, his chest tight, his fingers cold. The net emerged slowly, soaked, and then he saw it. It was a head. Human, it wasn't rotten nor injured. It was as if it had just come out of the water, pale skin, hair floating gently, and the eyes were open. Those eyes were alive, fixed on him, not scared, not pleading, just attentive, aware, as if they knew who he was. Manuel froze. Time stopped. The sound of the sea vanished. He felt the silence grow inside him, thick as mud. And then, the mouth of the head moved, slowly. Deliberately. "Let me go." The voice didn't come through his ears, it came from within, like a whisper rising from the depths of his mind. Before Manuel could react, run, scream, do anything, the head turned on its own inside the net. With a calm, almost graceful movement, it fell back into the water. Of its own will. It didn't sink immediately. It floated for a moment, looking at him one last time, the eyes still open. And then it disappeared. The sea closed in silence. Since that night, Manuel no longer fishes at night. He says the sea looks back at him, and that sometimes he feels something pulsing beneath the boat, calling his name. After that, the river started to bubble. Not violently, like when the fish are agitated or the tide changes. It was subtle, almost imperceptible, but constant. Small bubbles rising to the surface, popping with a soft, rhythmic sound, as if the very bottom were breathing, as if something down there were laughing. Manuel watched in silence. Cold sweat ran down his neck despite the night being chilly. He dropped the net, dropped the boat. He gave up fishing that same day. He told anyone who would listen that the river was strange, that he had seen too much, that he wouldn't set foot in the water again. For a week he avoided the dock. He spent the days silent, locked in his house, the light off, even at noon. Some neighbors said they saw him talking to himself. Others swore he was writing numbers on the ground with charcoal, erasing them all before nightfall. But then, on a cloudy morning, Manuel disappeared. Not in the river, in the dry land. He was last seen walking toward the dock, slow steps, a fixed gaze, as if in a trance. There was no one waiting for him. No boat, no task. Only the silence and the sound of bubbles in the distance, bubbling louder than ever. When they went to search for him, there were no footprints, no bag, no signs of a struggle. Only a strip of damp earth where his feet should have passed, and the smell of stagnant water in the air, as if the river had extended and taken him with it. Some say Manuel was called back. Others believe he never left the threshold. But there are those who hear, in the quietest of nights, a whisper coming from the river. "Let me go." The diary also talks about the men of salt, creatures that should not exist, but appear when the sky is heavy, gray, and without the moon, as if the world itself were holding its breath. According to the old pages, they appear at the edge of the water, rivers, seas, silent mangroves, with pale, almost translucent skin, always wet as if they never dry. They don't breathe, they don't blink. They're just there, standing, watching. They don't attack. They don't run, don't scream, don't hide. They just watch, and sometimes they whisper names, not out loud. It's more like a strange thought that appears coming from nowhere, a familiar word that emerges inside your head, your name, or someone close to you, spoken with a voice you don't recognize, but you feel like you've heard it before, maybe in a dream, or in a nightmare. The men of salt don't force anyone. They wait. They wait for you to approach the water, for you to go see where that strange sound is coming from, for you to try to understand why your name echoes in the waves. And when you take the first step, they do nothing. They just watch. But those who get too close don't return the same. The diary doesn't say exactly what happens. It only mentions that the water takes what is offered willingly, and that afterward silence returns. For a while. On the last page that talks about them, there's an underlined sentence, with the ink smudged by the humidity. They only enter where the land ends, and they only leave when someone accepts to listen. No one knows for sure what they are, but everyone knows what to do when they see figures standing near the shore, with eyes fixed and skin glowing under the mist. Don't say your name, and never, never get closer to the water. In 2003, two brothers went fishing at night and saw lights walking on the sea, not floating like lanterns or reflections. Walking, slow, steady steps, as if the sea were solid ground, as if the water recognized those presences and didn't dare to sink them. They were a few miles off the coast, in a calm area known only to the most experienced fishermen. The sky that night was overcast. No moon, no stars. The kind of darkness that swallows everything. The two brothers, Raul and Davi, were about to pull in the net when the lights appeared. First 1, then 3, then 7. Each lit up on the horizon, coming slowly, in a straight line, toward them. The boat's radio, old but functional, began to crackle, choppy noises, fragments of static, and for a moment silence, then a voice. It was Davi, fearful, quiet. "There's someone here with us?" Seconds later, the frequency was flooded with screams, real screams of fear, of pain, of something that no one has ever been able to explain. And then, silence. The boat was found drifting the next day, with the navigation lights still on and the net intact, full of fish that no one dared touch. There was no blood, no sign of a struggle, just the broken radio, and wet footprints on the deck leading to the edge, but not returning. Since then, the older fishermen say that on certain nights, if you look too far at the horizon, you might see lights walking on the water, and if you listen carefully, you might hear Raul's last words, repeated in the crackle of the tide. "There's someone here with us." And there is. 3 knocks on the hull, always around 3 a.m., dry, rhythmic, as if someone were asking to come in, or letting you know they've already entered. This is the signal. The older fishermen speak of it quietly, as if fearing that just mentioning it might be enough to summon whatever it is. It happens on calm sea nights, when everything seems at peace, when sleep starts to weigh down and the mind slows. That's when the 3 knocks come. a pause between each one, like a held breath. Some tried to ignore it. Others got up, nervous, thinking it was the hull hitting some loose wood, or a larger fish struggling underneath the boat. But those who had the courage to go up to the deck heard footsteps, wet footsteps, slow, dragging, like bare feet walking on soaked wood. And then, the strangest part, the footprints. They didn't come from the edge inward. They came from the sea into the boat. Small footprints, almost childlike, like a child who had emerged from the ocean in silence. No one has ever seen who or what leaves those marks. They appear and disappear as if they evaporate before sunrise. But those who heard the footsteps say that for a moment they felt a presence behind them, a light breath, a sense that something small yet hungry was very, very close. One of the fishermen swore he heard a voice whisper his name with a childhood accent, as if someone he had known long ago had come back. After that, he never fished at night again, because when the 3 knocks come, always at 3 a.m., it's not the sea calling, it's what lives within it. One of the men lit the lantern and saw handprints on the surface of the water. It was late at night, the river calm, too quiet. The kind of silence that doesn't comfort, that weighs on you. They were docked just a few meters from the shore, waiting for time to pass until sunrise. Everything seemed normal, until he looked at the water. There was no wind, no waves. The surface of the water was as smooth as glass. And that's when he saw it. Marks, palms pressed against the water's surface, as if someone, or something, was down there, watching, waiting. The fingers were long, too thin to be human, and the marks didn't move with the flow of the river. It was as if they were stuck there, like footprints left on the inside of glass. The lantern trembled in his hand, and even without seeing a face, he felt the gaze, an invisible weight climbing up his back, a cold that didn't come from the wind. He turned off the light, and didn't speak another word that night. The next morning they found him on the dock, lying on his side, as if he had fallen asleep there. His skin pale, his breath weak but still alive. In his ears, tangled as if placed carefully, green, wet seaweed still dripping. He didn't remember anything, or pretended not to remember. But since then he refuses to go near any body of water, even a puddle after the rain. And sometimes when someone talks to him and he gets distracted, he seems to hear voices coming from nowhere, as if something is still whispering, down there. My grandfather reported a strange encounter, a woman floating in the sea on her back. It was late afternoon, the sun nearly disappearing on the horizon, leaving the sea painted in a faded red like diluted blood. He was alone in the boat, heading home, when he saw the body, motionless, bathed in golden light, floating face down, as if sleeping in the warm embrace of the waves. He thought it was someone lost, perhaps a body brought by the current. His heart raced, out of fear, duty, instinct. So he approached, and the woman turned on her own, without moving her arms, without any effort, as if the water obeyed her. Her face was pale, her eyes wide open, but not dead, fixed, attentive, and she smiled. Her mouth was full of sharp, long white teeth, like fish spines. It wasn't a human smile. It was a warning. My grandfather froze. Fear clung to his hands like cold salt. But before he could move, she spoke. In my grandmother's voice. The same sweet, drawn-out voice he had known since he was a boy. The same tone she used to call his name in the mornings, or to tell stories before bed. But my grandmother had already died. She had passed away a year earlier, buried in a closed coffin far from the sea. He never told what she said. Never. Only that, after that day, he never went into the water again. Not even to dip his feet, not even to cry. He said that the sea sometimes wears the faces of those you love, to pull you deeper, and that the most dangerous thing you can hear is a familiar voice calling from the wrong place. After that, he started hearing his own name coming from the water. It wasn't an echo. It wasn't delirium. It was clear, sharp, coming from the sea. Joachim. It called with a dragged, wet voice, as if spoken by someone submerged. "Come back to me." He heard it for the first time while fixing the nets, alone in the boat, with the tide still and too calm. He thought it was the wind or some painful memory playing tricks on his mind. But the next night, the call came again. Same tone, same rhythm, same hour, 3 in the morning, on the dot. And it wasn't just him. Other fishermen in other boats on different nights began to hear it too. Not their names, his name. Joaquim. "Come back to me." Some tried to laugh, make jokes, but no one laughed for real. Others began to avoid fishing with him. They said it was something stuck to him, that the sea had already chosen him, that calling his name was a warning and a promise. Joaquim tried to ignore it. He threw the nets away, sold the boat, stopped talking about the sea. But the voice kept coming, even on dry land, sometimes in the sound of the wind, other times coming from inside the water buckets or from the drips on the roof during the rain. "Come back to me." On the last night they saw him, he was standing at the edge of the pier, barefoot, staring fixedly at the dark water. He left no note. He made no noise. He simply disappeared. But those who pass by there at 3 in the morning swear they still hear it. His name, being called. As if the sea hadn't finished with Joaquim yet. The last page of the journal was torn, but it was still possible to read something handwritten, trembling. The ink was smudged by the humidity, as if it had been written in a hurry, or fear, or both. The handwriting, once firm on the earlier pages, now barely held together, shaky, wavering, as if the hand guiding it was no longer entirely human. You could see where the page had been ripped, as if someone had tried to erase the end. But the sentence remained. "He called me by my name, and now I am part of him." Nothing more. No date, no signature. Just that. A confession, a warning, or perhaps a surrender. The page ended there, suspended in the terror of the one who wrote it, and the silence after it said more than any paragraph. Whoever read it never forgot, because, deep down, the question wasn't who called him, but when he would start calling other names too. And the scariest thing is realizing one night at 3 in the morning that the sound of the sea might be saying yours. They never found my grandfather. No body, no boat, nothing. Only one thing was left behind. His hat. That thick straw one, already faded by the sun and salt. The one he even wore to sleep. It floated alone, adrift, caught on an old rope, wrapped around a rusty hook. The kind of hook that nobody used anymore for decades. Big, heavy, made to catch something that shouldn't have been there. The search team combed the coast for days. Helicopters, divers, even the Navy. But the boat disappeared. Not adrift, not sunken. Gone, as if it had never existed. No trace on the radar, no wood floating, no signal on the radio. Not even the name of the vessel was on the records anymore. As if the sea, after calling him, had erased everything, even the memory of what it took. Some say he left of his own accord. Others say he finally answered the call. But there are nights when I swear I hear the engine of an old boat in the distance, even with no light on the horizon. And when the wind shifts sometimes, it carries a low sound, almost human. "Come back to me." I burned the journal. I thought it would set me free. That by erasing the words, by consuming every page, I would be wiping out the evil that my family carried for generations. The fire devoured the paper, the words, the ink. Everything turned to ashes, smoke that was lost in the wind as if it had never existed. But it didn't work, because now it's my name that the sea whispers at night. At 3 in the morning, always at 3. I hear the voice, thin, distant, but clear as if it's right behind me, as if it's right here, deep inside my mind. "Come back to me." And no matter where I go, no matter how far I run, it follows me. The sea calls me. Each day, each night, it gets closer. I feel the water cold hitting my legs, even when there's no water around me. I see the waves rising, even when the sky is clear and the sea calm. I feel the weight of something invisible, watching, waiting. No matter how much I try to hide, it will find me. The sea always finds what belongs to it, and when it calls me for the last time, there will be no more escape. I know this now. The burned journal didn't set me free, it only sealed me. I'm not a fisherman. I've never been on a boat. I never knew what it was like to face the waves or hear the sound of the sea at night. Fishing was never a part of me. But since that night, I dream of white hands trying to pull me out of bed. Cold, wet, as if they were coming from the depths of a dark river or a freezing ocean. And I can feel the dampness, the intense cold, the thin nails scratching my wrist, my ankle, trying to drag me away. Every night the nightmare repeats. I thrash about, wake up with my heart racing, breath shallow, but always with the feeling that I am not alone. These hands, that are not mine, continue to call me. And the most horrifying thing is that deep down, I know where they come from. Because the sound of the voice calling me is his, my grandfather's voice. The voice I hadn't heard in so long since he disappeared. But now, it's in my dreams, whispering my name with that soft, distant tone as if calling me back to the sea, to the depths, to the darkness. I never wanted to understand what happened to him. I never wanted to know what the sea did. But now he wants me to know. And every night it's as if the sea is pulling me out of bed, dragging me toward the water, to where the others went, where he is, and where, in the end, I will go too. And if one day I disappear, please, don't look for me. I know how this sounds. I know you will look anyway. You'll search for days, for weeks, until the emptiness consumes me and the pain of absence spreads. But please do yourself a favor. Don't look for me. The sea has already chosen me. I heard the call. I cannot escape it, just like there is no escaping the tide. When it calls, you can't resist. You can try, but you won't succeed. And the sea never forgets. It never forgets the names of those who answered its call. I know now. Because the whisper started weak, distant like a lost echo, but gradually it became clearer, stronger. I heard the name calling me, felt the weight of the water against my skin, as if it were already embracing me, taking me. When I accepted, it was as if something inside me had finally been awakened. Something I can no longer control. No matter how much I try to pull away, no matter how many times I turn my back on the sea, it always comes back. It always finds me. And if one day I disappear, if my footprints vanish from the sand and there are no more traces of me, understand, I have already been claimed by the sea, and it won't let me go. Don't look for me. The sea never forgets.